Hey everyone, Adam Scott here, head GM and designer of RPG Club. If you're interested in what we do, check the link in the bio. But we're here today because I keep getting the question of how do I find a good D&D or role-playing group and what questions should I ask? This is my response to that, and it's something that's been on my mind for a long time. I believe that many people in the way they play the game are heavily influenced by the edition, the Dungeons and Dragons edition, which they first were introduced to the role playing hobby by. I don't know if that's appropriately expressed, but if you came in with advanced D&D or you came in with D&D 3rd edition or 4th edition, you may have a different perspective in terms of storytelling style and gameplay expectations than someone else. So many new people have come to the hobby with 5th edition, and I love to point this out because I see so many new players that come to the hobby and genuinely don't realize how different the game has been throughout its history and the different storytelling experiences in contemporary cinema and storytelling and novels and books and media throughout the different generations of fantasy storytelling, sci-fi storytelling. So people that come to the hobby in the modern sense, they tend to anticipate what they see on Critical Role or what they see on Dimension 20 or what they see put up on the D&D movie that came out. Like they see that and expect that that is the tone and style of what will be a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. And from my perspective, a lot of the modern adventures, many of them are lighthearted, somewhat campy, and I think a lot of them don't necessarily dig too deeply into subjects that may upset people. That's just my perspective. Certainly I haven't seen all the media out there, but that's what I see. Now, I feel like many modern audiences that have come to the hobby expect that to be the norm. And so, what I see when people are trying to find the right table at which they fit is many people think that that is the universal experience that they'll find at the table. Of course, not always. There's going to be different expectations for everyone, but I think that's in general what I've seen working with thousands of people. Many times I see people who come to the table as newer players and they encounter maybe different styles from dungeon masters that learned with 3rd edition, with advanced D&D, where stories might be a little bit grittier, a little bit darker. They might deal with more emotionally complex issues. And that can create a lot of challenge at the table. So what is the whole point of this and how can this help you? My perspective is not that one of those is right or wrong for you as a person. I want you to find the style that works for you. But I think it's really helpful to talk to your dungeon master if you're a new player and say, well, what edition did you start with? What types of stories do you like telling? What types of media did you enjoy reading or consuming? Like talk to somebody as a human being. If you're a dungeon master and you're running a game for your family, your friends, or people that maybe you've met at a game store and you don't know them that well, maybe you have a conversation about, well, where did you first hear about D&D or where did you hear about role playing? What types of media do you like? What types of stories do you like? Because what I see as the largest conflict within the hobby is when the dungeon master, the game master, and the group have misaligned expectations over the tone and content of the story, because that can create a really uncomfortable experience. So you, when you're trying at home to find a game that works for you, consider asking a GM, well, what edition did you learn on? What kind of stories did you like? What kind of books do you like to read? You'll get a really good idea for their style of storytelling and their preferred way of storytelling by having a conversation. It might work for you. And that dungeon master or those player groups, maybe they don't work for you. But the good thing is that that's okay. There's so many options for gameplay right now. Like if you're looking to get a game, RPG Club has tons of games all the time. We have hundreds of active players. We've served over 7,000 players in our life since we've come about. So it's easy to find a game if you're trying to play, but I don't want you to feel discouraged if you don't find the right match. But having a conversation, starting with different types of additions that people play with, might be a good idea. Now, as a side note, 4th edition doesn't get a lot of discussion because 4th edition came about during the era of MMORPGs. So you may not encounter too many Dungeons and Dragons GMs who learn to play with 4th edition, because I think most people that like MMORPGs like WoW, they went over and just played video games instead, which is great. But you may not see a whole lot of 4th edition out in the wild. But you might see a lot of 3rd edition, especially if you're 5th edition. Coming in at 5th edition, you might have a 3rd edition dungeon master who learned during 3rd edition. Those are very different styles of gameplay. So have a conversation with them to figure out how you all can work together. And if you can't, it is okay to say, maybe this isn't going to be a great fit for us. because there's so many options out there for you. My name's Adam Scott. I really appreciate you being here. As always with this, like, subscribe. It helps other people learn about this if you're trying to help someone. And I look forward to seeing